Rita. So I think that I'm probably going to have a slightly different approach from a lot of the people that we've heard today, and actually from a lot of the talks that I've heard so far. One of the things that I kind of looked at when thinking about 3D and the web is looked at what is the web right now. So I put together a little graph here. So right now on the web, you have CSS, HTML, you have Ajax, you have JavaScript, you have video, audio. All of these things are core primitives that are provided by the web browser. And then on top of that, you have toolkits, essentially middleware, jQuery, YUI, and then even other languages such as PHP, Python, Java, that are all part of the web experience, but that are not built into the core browser. And so the question that we ask ourselves is, what is kind of the smallest primitive that we can add to the web browser to allow for 3D and interactive content, but without actually creating an extremely complex kind of framework? And so one thing we looked at OpenGL. We have a piece of functionality called Canvas 2D right now in the browser. It's essentially a 2D rendering surface. And so we said, well, what happens if we were to just provide the OpenGL API as an alternate way of drawing content to the surface? And so right now we have an extension, the Canvas 3D extension, that exposes OpenGL ES 1.1 and OpenGL ES 2.0 directly in the browser. This has a number of advantages. The main one is that it's very simple. It's simple not just for us to implement, but for any other browser vendor that wants to implement this. They have an existing spec. They probably already have hardware support on whatever device that they're using. And they can add this capability without having to implement an entire new large spec. What we've seen is that the web is not good at adopting large specs. SVG is a great example of this. Right now, all mainstream browsers, with the exception of IE, notable exception of IE, implement SVG, but they all implement slightly different aspects of it. None of them have a complete implementation, and none of them are really interoperable. In conjunction with that, there are very few people out there actually creating SVG content. It's a totally brand new thing. People have to kind of learn how to be SVG authors. And even compared to HTML, it's significantly more complex. On the flip side, there are a lot of people, not in the web world, but a lot of people in the 3D world that already know OpenGL. So it's relatively easy to find somebody and say, hey, you know OpenGL, come help me build middleware, come help me build this kind of virtual environment. It's just going to be in JavaScript and it's going to be part of the web. So doing it that way also lets browser vendors such as Mozilla focus on what we know how to do best. We can focus on continuing to improve security. We can focus on JavaScript performance. We can focus on kind of the core platform capabilities while still allowing other developers to iterate very quickly on providing additional 3D capabilities. This also means that there doesn't have to be a kind of a one-size-fits-all approach to 3D on the web. Somebody who's doing scientific visualization has very different needs from the kind of rendering, well, not necessarily the kind of rendering, but the kind of API that they want to use to render than somebody who's doing 3D social spaces on the web. And so the ability to plug in different types of middleware that all get the accelerated rendering is pretty powerful because it lets those pieces evolve independently of the browser itself. And then as these different spaces come out and we figure out, well, they're all kind of doing a couple of common tasks. For example, let's say they're all doing collada loading. Then we can say, let's look at adding collada support directly into the browser core and just provide a high-level load this collada object. Let me access its meshes. Let me access the textures that are referenced in there. And how can we tie that back in to kind of the canvas space? So that's really kind of our approach, and there's definitely kind of some advantages there. One of the biggest ones is that it goes wherever the web goes, and one of the places where the web is going is here. The web is increasingly becoming prevalent on mobile, especially as the iPhone has shown. You can have a full web experience there, and we want to make sure that 3D can be part of that experience, whether you're using the web on a desktop or whether you're using it on your mobile phone. So that's, I guess to kind of finish up based on Rita's original question, I'm not sure where Web3 is actually heading, but I think that it has to start in the browser. And from there, we can figure out how to help it get wherever it needs to go. Thanks.